Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alley Cats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to, I believe this is the third year that we've done a draft, but the second that we've done a recruiting class draft for our 4-year anniversary, or as a part of the 4-year anniversary special. Full disclosure, we're recording this about 2 or so weeks before it actually happens, or whenever the episode drops. But as always, as we had last year, we have one of, if not the recruiting guys in the K-State sphere, because we figured we'll bring in someone that's actually qualified to talk about this, and that's Drew Galloway. So, Drew, how are you doing?
Good. It's always fun to be back on, and I'm really looking forward to this because I feel like everybody hears my thoughts. They're probably tired of my thoughts, so I'm always looking forward to this to hear what you guys think, because that's just what makes recruiting and really diving in and scouting super fun, is that 3 guys can have totally opposite takes about a certain player.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the draft format so interesting as well, because it's just like any other draft where different teams are going to value different guys differently. But to let everyone know the format, we're going to do the high school draft first and then the transfer draft. Drew gets the first overall pick in each round. I get the second. Connor gets the third overall. So let's just go ahead, and I feel like definitely the top 2, if not the top 3, are definitely kind of going to go to chalk. So, Drew, you can go ahead and tell everyone's number 1 overall pick. No suspense here.
Yeah, I wonder who I could take. But I'm going to take Lincoln Cure, obviously. I mean, he is somebody that from the first time that I saw him at the Sharp Combine, what was 2 years ago now, I was like, holy cow, who is this kid from Goodland, Kansas, that was tearing people up? And then, I told everybody the funny story of when I saw Lincoln Cure again at a K-State camp not too long after that, and I saw him, and the main headliner there in the secondary was Callan Barta. I was like, Callan Barta's kind of getting torched by this kid from Goodland. Like, what does that end up looking like for him? Well, Barta, I think, is going to be a lot better at receiver going forward since he's moving there. And then, lo and behold, Lincoln Cure ends up being a top 40 national recruit. So it's funny how things happen and how sometimes you see somebody and you're like, they could be a guy later on, and then they end up being ranked super, super high, and he's just one of those guys.
Yeah, little Kansas on Kansas violence with Lincoln Cure and Kellen Barta. It is interesting that Barta switched to receiver, which I guess that ruins the development path he always takes in CFP 25. But there's no surprise there. Lincoln Cure is a freak athlete who, it's not an exaggeration to say he could fill the Kyle Pitts in college role, where he is that Y flex receiver that isn't really a true tight end, but he isn't a wide receiver either. He's better defined as just an offensive weapon. And it's what we thought we were getting with Will Anseau, just souped up on the biggest horse steroids perhaps in human history. So him going 101, wholly unsurprising to me.
I don't have anything else to say, so I don't know if you're waiting for me to say something, but there's no additional superlatives, I think, that can add anything to this discussion.
He's really good.
There it is. That's the hard-hitting analysis here. And with the second pick for the recruiting class draft of this year, we're going to go with one of the later ads of the class as opposed to one of the early ones, which I think people were expecting me to take. But Larry Porter IV might just be my favorite receiver that K-State has ever picked up. And I don't say that lightly, because I was extremely high on Trey Spivey coming out of high school. I liked Jace Brown. I did not expect Jace Brown to become what he is. But LP4, not only does he have an elite receiver nickname already, which, that already adds like plus 15 style points. But he has a more complete skill set than I think a lot of people realize, because he does have that route running acumen. He does have solid deep speeds, and he does have really good hands and the ability to catch through contact. And all of this is in spite of the fact that he's only in a 6'1" frame. Normally you expect that skill set to come with someone who's 6'2", 6'3", but that 6'1" frame, he wears it all super well. And I remember looking at his film, I'm just like, wait a minute, why is this guy only a 3-star? Why isn't this guy attracting like this insane offer sheet? Because he was the best receiver in the Kansas City Metro. So to me, him getting added to the K-State roster, he could, if it weren't for all the transfer receivers and it had to come down to Larry Porter IV playing, I think he could step in and contribute. He doesn't have to because of the transfer additions that we'll talk about. But yeah, it took a lot to unseat who I assume Connor will be taking with the number 3 overall pick. But I mean, Larry Porter IV he's one of my favorite players that K-State's ever picked up.
Yeah, man. I really like Larry Porter IV as well. And if you had taken JoJo Scott, then I was going to take Larry Porter. But I think he flies under the radar so much because he was one of those late pickups that kind of came down to like that last week of the recruiting cycle. And also he was a really late bloomer as well. Like he was kind of an under the radar guy and then led the state of Missouri in receiving his year kind of out of nowhere. And ended up kind of going from an unranked guy on pretty much nobody's radar to on 3, I think had him as a 92 graded 4-star by the time everything was said and done. So like he had one of the more meteoric ascents, that's for sure. And he's someone that not only am I glad that K-State has, I'm glad that KU doesn't have, because I'm pretty sure they were his only other offer. So I'm happy that we were able to seal the deal on him.
Yeah, I love Larry Porter. He's a dude. He's already on campus. The K-State coaches love him since he's been on campus. He can go up and catch the ball really well for his size and plays bigger than that 6'1". And that was something that I really pointed out during his signature spotlight, because remember, like this was a signing day commitment. So it was like commit story, signature spotlight, both came out at the same time. And didn't really get to talk a ton about Larry Porter because he was just flying under the radar and then ends up committing. But yeah, he can really do it all, and is somebody that probably not this year because there's so much upperclassmen traffic in front of him. But as soon as next year, it wouldn't be shocking if he ends up being a guy that is near the top of the depth chart at receiver.
Yeah, man, he's going to be so exciting. If we were doing this just based off of who do I want to play as in the next college football game, the draft would turn out the exact same way, at least up to this point. But I mean, damn, dude, it's just going to be such a dangerous young roster. But Connor, I think you said it earlier, but who are you taking number 3 overall?
I'm taking JoJo Scott here. This is somebody that I remember when he first committed. This was somebody that Ace, you and me, we watched his film, and we're pretty sure we both pretty boldly thought that he was going to be a 4-star by the time the cycle was done. And his ratings didn't move like at all from the time he committed to now. He's still kind of that middle to middle upper 3 starts here, which is still a solid place to be. But he didn't ever get that 4-star treatment or really break out the ratings, I think, the way that we were hoping that he was going to. But the talent is still there. He's a wildly athletic corner, and he shows that both in his defensive tape and in the return game as well. He has some really good kick and punt returns, also some really electric interception returns. He has a knack for jumping routes as well, which I don't know how well that'll translate because it's pretty easy to read high school quarterbacks at some points, I imagine. But he's still he just looks like a freak of nature lined up across some of the receivers he's going up against, because he's a pretty big corner as well. He's listed at 6'1", but he looks bigger than 6'1", which normally you see guys get listed at like 6'3", 6'4". You're kind of like, maybe not. But he seems like somebody that he's a bit more imposing, I think, than what he's listed as right now. But I think because he never really got the ratings bump that he probably deserved, he's flown under the radar a bit more than maybe what his talent truly is.
Yeah, JoJo Scott is a guy that is probably longer than that 6'1" is, which makes him feel more physically imposing. Has one of the most fun film watches because he plays receiver, plays at corner. He has some kick returns. If you go back even to his junior year, he was their Wildcat quarterback at times. It's like he really did it all for his high school. And I think that he is somebody that is just really fun because of the success that K-State has had in the secondary, especially with guys that are really tall, really long, and can really run. And JoJo Scott checks off all three of those boxes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I think that's why I fell in love with his tape so much, because it's easy to fall in love with exciting tape, and it's hard not to get excited when you have Wildcat quarterback snap, interception return, kick return, all back to back to back. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Did we find a two-way player? No, we didn't. But yeah, I've been on the JoJo Scott hype train ever since he committed, and he was one of the first players to commit in this class. So it would not surprise me. Now, I want to say that I'm very high on all of the defensive back commits in this class, but JoJo Scott is probably the one that would surprise me the least if he had the highest floor or had the highest ceiling out of all of them. And as an insight to my draft philosophy, most of the time I'm drafting based on ceiling, because I'm that's just kind of how I am. It's like I'm willing to think of a risk and be like, okay, but if it hits though. So basically I'm just a really bad gambler. Anyway, Drew, with the 4th overall pick, you have
with the 4th overall pick, I'm actually going to get the guy that was my number 3 overall on my personal board. And it's a guy that I've been high on since he committed and said that he was going to be able to play right away. And I still think that is the case in Logan Bartley. He's another guy that has super, super fun tape, hits with reckless abandon, is good in coverage. Also just a super, super smart kid and very cerebral. I mean, again, he's a guy that's already been in Manhattan for a little bit, and the coaches really love him. I believe it was Joe Klanderman even went to go as far as to say is like he doesn't want to put too much pressure on Bartley, but he thinks that he has a really, really bright future. So he's somebody that I'm super excited about. And really, since he took that visit late in July of last year and kind of found out that K-State was really about to flip him, has been somebody that I've been super, super excited about.
And for the, we probably should have established this before, but for the comments, we'll do the person who has the next pick talks. So I got the thoughts on Logan Bartley, and I agree with you. He was number 5 on mine. So if you would have taken my number 4, I would have immediately taken him. But Logan Bartley is one of those rare safeties where normally you sort of look at their tape and you think, oh, that's a strong safety, that's a jack safety, or that's a true center fielding free safety. I think Logan Bartley could play all of them. And I think that he could play them all at a pretty high level. And it's all because of that mixture of skill sets that he has. I mean, he doesn't have the hip fluidity of an outside corner, but he doesn't need to, because he's going to be a safety. He's going to be, and he can rotate, which I know a lot of K-State's defenses, they don't rely on safety rotations. But Drew, I remember you asking during the season about that short motion that just about everyone in college football uses to get their number 1 receiver on that third safety. And I think that Logan Bartley, and this is no disrespect to Marquis Siegel because he was able to hold his own in that case. We're not talking about Jordan Riley. He doesn't exist. But I think Bartley could hold his own in that situation. And I think that's what makes him such a great fit in this defense because of how those rotations in K-State's defense operate.
Yeah. I had Bartley in the same general area. I had a really rough time sorting out my 4 through 6 because there's 3 guys there where I look at all of them and I was like, honestly, all of them have a K Steve and be top 3 if like Lincoln Cure like what didn't exist. Like if this was like a more normal class, but Bartley was still way up there for me, and yeah, he's a super fun film watch because it's kind of like that old school type of safety where you think back to kind of like those like highlight packages they have in game of like I think it's Mario Smith like laying the hit on a BYU receiver that probably would have gotten kicked out of the league like nowadays. Like it feels like that sort of football when you watch him. And yeah, he definitely comes off as someone that could be ready to maybe rotate in here and there just a little bit. Hopefully we have enough blowouts to where we get to see him in some low stress situations. But we'll see.
Yeah. And my next pick is my number 4. So I'm glad that he's still here. And I have a couple guys, and this is why I sort of explain that I'm someone who's going to really focus on ceiling. And to me, one of the highest ceilings in this class belongs to Darian Whitaker. And the knock against Whitaker is no one really knows what or where he's going to play because of the tweener size at 6'4", 215. And people get caught on the, is it Will or Wayne Jones that played like 6 different positions?
Wayne Jones, man.
Jones. Who also got absolutely destroyed by Breece Hall in that K-State home game where he single-handedly blew the fit. And yes, I'm still mad at it. But I think Darian Whitaker, I personally have him slotted in that sort of Des Purnell, Sam linebacker role. And I think he could play other places, but it's always going to be about how quickly can he get up to speed. I'm a big believer in the physical talent of Darian Whitaker, and I believe that no matter where he goes, he will put on the weight. It's just a matter of projecting where he ends up, because I could see him ending up as, the Elijah Lee, Tobi Osunsanmi NASCAR pass rusher. And I think that he'd be really good in that role because he has a really good mixture of play strength, physicality, and speed. And that's at 215. That's only going to get better as time progresses. And what he needs to learn is coverage and more sort of football instincts of it. And that'll just come with time. But if he's able to get that development in the linebacker room, like I said, I project him as a Sam linebacker, the Des Purnell position. I could see him playing basically any linebacker position except Mike. I don't think he's heavy enough in the ass to play Mike linebacker, and I could see him being a specialist pass rusher. But yeah, all the physical traits for Whitaker are there, and they show up despite the fact that he's playing relatively undersized even in his tape. So to me, Whitaker is another one of those really, really exciting ceiling players.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. And I'm glad you mentioned Tobi Osunsanmi because that's probably a solid comp in terms of like their prospect profile, where they're just hyper athletic kind of linebacker guys, where you're hoping that they can kind of put it together at the linebacker position, but if that doesn't work, then they can maybe move down. Because I remember our very first recruiting rankings, we did Tobi Osunsanmi, and that was entirely projecting on his ability to become an elite football player because he was already an elite athlete. Darian Whitaker is in a very similar spot. Of course, it speaks a lot to how recruiting has gotten much better here at K-State because Tobi was our far and away number 1 and that first recruiting rankings did. And Darian Whitaker, he's here. I'm just cracking the top 5. And that's not a shot at Darian Whitaker because he's still a fantastic prospect. But no, I'm curious to see where he ends up as well. He's someone that could load up a little bit weight-wise and play a similar role to Toby, but if he's able to put things together at the linebacker position, I'd love to keep him there because his athleticism, I think, is going to play really well in the Big 12. So looking forward to seeing more from him.
Yeah, I debated about Bartley or Whitaker for a really long time. Whitaker's the guy that I saw at a KC camp last summer. And the immediate first thing that went through my head when I saw him before he had even ran or done anything was, oh my God, who is that? Because he was so big and so strong. And then we got to see him go through drill work. And some poor running back got absolutely destroyed by Darian Whitaker in a pass protection drill. And at that point, K-State had already had 4 linebackers. And the internal debate was like, in my head at least, was like, well, you got to find room for this guy somewhere. And K-State did that and then ended up getting his commitment. And he's, again, already on campus. And it's somebody that the coaches, again, have already pointed out as doing all the right things as a true freshman. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to kind of where his playing time kind of progresses. Because, I mean, we saw Toby Usansami on kickoff coverage. Darian Whitaker on kick coverage will be very exciting when that time comes for the first time. Because I imagine a lot of his playing time in the early going will be special teams work.
God, I'm just getting visions of Jordan Allen on kick coverage, which happened a few times this year, and I just stared at it like, okay. First off, sorry, Connor, don't want to interrupt the flow of the episode here, but that poor running back, he did not deserve whatever the hell happened to him. From like this kid who committed to Northern Iowa, he's like, oh, I probably got this, and then he immediately gets tombstone pile drivered into the next existence. That poor kid.
Yeah, that kid's got a good story to tell, though, now at least. Probably was not fun in the moment.
Anyway, Connor, with the number 6 overall pick, you are taking.
Yeah, speaking of running backs, I'm taking Montario Elston here with the 6th pick. That kind of rounds out my group of these 3 guys here in the second round where like I would have been happy with any of them. So like I'm coming out of this a happy camper, but Elston, he's got a really fun film as well. K-State running backs the last couple of years has really done a great job of just getting guys that have incredible highlight tapes. I mean, like I'm thinking last year, Devon Rice, he was a lot of fun to watch. So we're kind of continuing that here with Elston, and of course picking up Dylan Edwards in the portal. No, I guess at one point in high school, but I absolutely love Elston's film. And he's, I mean, at this point, I'm not going to be bothered by him only being 5'7". It just doesn't matter, really. Like we've seen it work with Deuce and with Dylan now, so that's just not a big deal to me. But Elston, I mean, I don't expect him to really be seeing the field. Like there's just too much talent in front of him, I think. But I absolutely love his film. He's electric in space, is able to create just horrible angles for defenders in pursuit as well. Does a lot of really great things in space, and he's able to make the most of his size like so many good small running backs have been able to in the past. So this is another great find for K-State, and to pluck him out of Arkansas's backyard is something to be proud of as well.
Yeah, Montario Elston's an electric factory. I mean, he is the home run hitter. Every time you get him the ball, there's a chance that he takes it to the house. Elite nickname with money. There's a chance that you could maybe see him on the field a little bit sooner than you think, because personally, I would like K-State to move from Dylan Edwards as a primary returner, because you have guys like Devon Rice and now Montario Elston that can easily pick up that role. because they did it in high school and can take it to the house every time that they get it. Just a little fun fact about Montario Elston that I guess I'll share here, because why not? If we were doing this by like when they actually committed, Montario Elston like really committed to K-State like December, January, and then ended up announcing, I think it was in July. So like this was done for a really, really long time before it was announced. And those are always kind of the scary ones, but was fun to see it come to fruition. And for my money, and this is saying something because there's a lot of fun films in this class, I think Montario Elston's is the most fun.
It's hard to argue against that point because there are some human joystick moments by Elston in his film. And I think an underrated part of his game is it's something that Joe Jackson, weirdly enough, did very, very well in high school. And that's just creating terrible angles. Joe Jackson does it in a different way where he's able to use a little bit more of, I think they're probably about the same speed, but Joe Jackson has a little bit better contact balance. But Montario Elston just it doesn't matter if you have contact balance if you're not getting hit. And that is exactly what Elston does. There's no more superlatives that I could really go into with him. So we'll kind of try to pick it up now that we're outside the second round, because as much as I'd be down for a 2-hour episode, I don't got anything to do. You two guys, I imagine, have more of a life than I do, so we can sort of pick it up because we have to do the transfers as well. But with the number, I believe, is 7 overall pick, Drew, you have...
Yeah, sticking with what I've done in the previous round, staying at safety or just defensive back in general. Somebody that K-State they recruited really hard in June, ended up getting him in December after Neil Brown was fired and Sirius Stinyard. Can do it all at defensive back. And that's why I keep saying defensive back, because I don't know if they know if he's going to be a corner or a safety yet. Really good in coverage, good hips, good speed. Is somebody that was like one of their top targets during the June portion of recruiting. So to end up still getting him and really making a spot for him really just shows how much they really, really liked him.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to note is they made room for Stinyard after the class had basically already been put together. That's the level of player that they viewed him as. And I project him as an outside corner, but I'm not mad at them if they develop him as a true jack safety. I just think his best skill set is sort of that, sticky, make sure that you're passing off routes. I think that's his best attribute, is just having that feel for outside coverage. And that's why I project him as an outside corner. I had him personally at number 10 on my board, but I can't. Again, we're in this next tier where I'm not going to argue against anyone in this tier going above someone else. So yeah, that's a really good pick.
Yeah. Stinyard, you got him just about where I have him as well. He was somebody I remember following in that summer recruiting window where I was really crossing my fingers and hoping we get him. I was so sad when he went to West Virginia, but then that was just such an awesome cherry on top for the recruiting class though at the end, where it's like, you get Larry Porter the fourth, you survive the Oregon onslaught for Lincoln Cure, and you get a bunch of other great players like JoJo Scott and plenty of guys that we haven't mentioned yet, Elston and Bartley and Whitaker. But then cherry on top, you get this guy that you really, really liked and lost several months ago in the Sirius Stinyard, and you get him back. And that was really awesome to get that opportunity to kind of get a second chance there. That and is also going to be great to have a guy on the preseason all-name team, because I always want K-State to have a guy on those teams. And I imagine Sirius is going to at least get honorable mention for those teams, but I'm regardless, I'm looking forward to seeing how he develops.
Yeah, that's another really exciting one. I'm gonna go for my number 6 player on my board, but number 8 overall in this draft is actually Brock Heath. And this is another player that I sort of think people sort of throttle back and forth on, and that's just kind of the nature of guards. And I've actually seen a few people prefer Villarreal over Brock Heath. I don't agree. I think Brock Heath has that sort of road grading bulldog mentality. Again, at only 260, 6'5" right now. But I mean, there's not a lot that you can really say about guards other than, road grader, really solid in pass protection. And is he my favorite offensive line commit that K-State's ever got? No, that honor still probably belongs to John Pastore. Please God get healthy once. But I really like the Brock Heath pickup because he just strikes me as a guard that kind of does everything solidly to good right out the box. And I think even with Connor Riley going on to the NFL, I think Brian LePack can mold someone like Brock Heath.
Yeah, I think you described Brock Heath pretty well in that he's someone, because of being an interior offensive lineman, opinions do kind of fluctuate on him. But one thing that really stands out to me is he's like extremely athletic for an offensive lineman. Like he's got really great burst, I think. That's really, I think, kind of what sets him apart right now, maybe from the way we've been going with interior offensive linemen, where you have like your 400-pound mammoths with Amos Talalele, but Heath is kind of the exact opposite. He's like pretty fleet-footed. Now he's not small, but he moves really well, and that gives him a nice leg up, and that a lot of linemen wouldn't have. He's got some interesting traits, but he does have a long way to go in the weight room, I think. But that's a pretty solid pick, honestly.
Yeah, I'll keep it kind of simple with Brock Heath. He is rock solid, has a super high floor, also comes from a long generation of K-Staters. So, this will really mean something to him, and I anticipate him even potentially being a future captain down the line.
We take those. Anyway, Connor, with the number 9 overall pick.
This is a guy that I was not expecting to like as much as I did when I went and watched his film. There's kind of been a guy like that just about every year. A couple years ago, Drake Beckwith was that guy for me, where he jumped off the page a bit more than I thought he would. But Weston Polk is that guy for me this year. I watched his film, and I honestly had kind of forgotten about him because he committed pretty early, and pretty much nothing was heard about him after that point. He just went about his business. But his film is awesome. It's a lot of fun. I can't remember who I used it for last year, but I said someone had psycho reliever energy. Weston Polk kind of falls into that same category. I think it might have been Strap Thomas I said that for last year. But
it was Stonebreaker.
But Weston Polk, he kind of brings that same mentality where almost every single highlight, he's laying a huge hit and he's getting right up in that person's face like the second after. And like he just looks absolutely jacked after every hit. He flies around more than I thought he would. He's super athletic. I was really surprised by how much I ended up liking his film. So I'm taking Polk here with the last pick of the 3rd round.
Yeah, Weston Polk, another guy already on campus. The K-State coaches, again, really, really like what they've seen from Weston Polk in the early going. Like you said, I was going to be even more blunt and just say he's a little bit crazy when he's on the field, but in a good way. And then I guess the only other thing that I'll add, just because I think that this is personally hilarious, is after he took an unofficial visit to TCU last spring, he said, okay, this isn't for me, and committed to K-State. Another Weston Polk fun fact, big-time fisherman.
Uh-oh, we have a high hit rate of
I
fishermen.
was about to say, we have a lot of fishermen, feels like. And feels like a lot of them end up making their way to the NFL. So future Indianapolis Colt, Weston Polk is what I'm hearing.
Who says no? But for me, Weston Polk is about where I had him, number 8 on my board. He just flies around, and I think that there's always going to be room for a linebacker that plays with his hair on fire and perhaps a screw loose on any defense, especially in a 3-3. So yeah, Weston Polk was my number 1 linebacker in this. No, he wasn't. That's Darian Whitaker, but true linebacker, as opposed to let's put him at linebacker and see what happens. But I have a feeling, I don't know, I just have a hunch of what the next pick is going to be, but I honestly don't know. I feel like there's a lot of directions that Drew could go here.
Well, now I'm intrigued to see if we're kind of thinking the same. My guy is somebody that I'm a little bit surprised has slipped a little bit this far, but I think it's just because he's so steady and so solid. It's Dylan Duff. Another one, Chris Kleiman talked about him for a long time on National Signing Day last December. 3-sport athlete, state champion basketball player, can really spin it, super athletic. It will be very close on how I feel about if he is potentially the next starting quarterback behind Avery Johnson. But I know that he will not go down without a fight.
For the record, to sort of spoil who's up next, I thought it was going to be RJ Collins next, because while I like Dylan Duff, to me, he just has a lot of things that he's pretty good at, but doesn't have that sort of one defining trait other than, basically go out there and vibes, desire to win, which, don't get me wrong, very important trait for a quarterback to have. But to me, his arm strength is good. His athleticism is good. His decision-making as of right now as a high school quarterback, that'll come along, but it's still good as it is right now. Duff is someone that I'm very excited to see how Matt Wells develops. I think that the quarterback battle between Blake Barnett and Dylan Duff, and I guess Jacob Knuth can come along too, is going to be one of the most interesting stories of the year after this. I personally would give the edge to Barnett just because I think that the main concern with Barnett is his arm strength, and even then, I don't think his arm strength is that bad. And I don't think that he's someone who you're just going to straight up be a battering ram either. I think that his accuracy was underrated, but Dylan Duff will definitely press Blake Barnett, and he will press him early. So that makes sense for him to be picked here as the quarterback as well.
I have very mixed feelings on Dylan Duff. I think as far as high school QBs go, I think I'd have him below Barnett. And I'm thinking back, well, Avery and Barnett are the two most recent. He's obviously below Avery, but I have him below Barnett as well. He's someone where it really depends on the day that I'm watching his film, where sometimes I totally see it and other days I don't. And I can't really put my finger on what it is because I'm not a good enough evaluator to really pick out the super deep intricacies of like why Matt Wells likes this guy more than the other guy. But what I do know is that Matt Wells does have a really good history of developing quarterbacks. And this is the first quarterback that Matt Wells really wanted when he got here. Because as I recall, he closed on Dylan Duff very quickly. And this was like the first guy that committed after Matt Wells got here. So Matt Wells wanted Dylan Duff, and he wanted him pretty bad and made that known. So he got his guy. So I'm just not going to spend that much time evaluating him because I don't know any better. I think that Matt Wells is going to have a better idea of what he wants than me. So But regardless, I'm interested to see, like you, Ace, I'm interested to see where this quarterback battle goes. This year, I'm particularly interested to see the backup line, how that maybe fluctuates throughout the year, which having an interesting backup quarterback battle, it's always a lot more fun than I think the starting quarterback battle. So I'll be keeping my eyes on that.
God, the Will Howard, Adrian Martinez post TCU game is, and well, the Avery Will Howard battle after the Texas Tech game. Oh God. Anyway, the next pick for me, I kind of spoiled it earlier, is RJ Collins, and this is one of those where I project him as a true free safety just because of his speed. And this is where we sort of get into the next tier for me of guys who have the athletic upside, but they're much more athletes than they are football players right now. And that to me is sort of the epitome with RJ Collins. And that's why I project him as a free safety, because I think that the number one thing that you want in a true free safety is range. And I think that that's something that RJ Collins is going to have pretty much as soon as he steps on campus. He just needs to get better in terms of, football feel, for lack of better term. But yes, this is me banking on a guy's speed, maybe a little more than I should. But to me, it's too tantalizing to not take RJ Collins whenever he can go hash to hash and just shut down windows that I don't think a lot of other safeties can, just because of his speed.
Yeah. I think that's a great pick. And I would have taken him if you didn't. So, I mean, the only thing that makes me a little sad about RJ Collins is that he didn't show up in winter. But now he's setting like all the track records in his class in Missouri. So I guess that's a fair trade-off to get a little extra fanfare on the way in. But he comes off as someone that's really locked in and is like a really emo guy, and his dad seems to be the same way, which that's always a nice benefit. Now, it doesn't mean everything, but it's always nice to see online, regardless, some more vocal support. But his film is interesting, but he is, I think, as a prospect, really similar to Jacob Parrish, and that you're taking a guy that for a fact is a plus athlete, and I think that he might be a little bit further along, at least based on what we thought, for being a defensive back, because Parrish, of course, we were way off on where we thought he was in terms of being ready as a defensive back. But to be fair, just about everybody was. But no, Collins, I think if he can follow a similar development track, that'd be pretty great. But he'll need some more time. I don't want to put the same amount of pressure on him to like be like a first year contributor on like a Big 12 championship team. That would be a lot to put on his shoulders. But I would take it.
Yeah, RJ Collins is a speed merchant. He can really, really fly, as we've all seen. He was somebody that really came onto my radar because, again, at a K-State camp, he was getting direction from Joe Klanderman after every single one-on-one rep, and was steadily improving as the camp went on. I also saw him at his first high school football game this fall, and we were talking about kick coverage earlier. He forced a fumble on their opening kickoff of the season that they ended up recovering. And then also, just for my money, probably one of the funniest kids that K-State has recruited, at least in my time really covering recruiting. We did a sit-down conversation with RJ like this week of signing day, and I think that we probably could have gone for an hour, but only went for like 20 minutes because RJ was all about our video, which was really fun.
But does he have a K-State tattoo on his body?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, maybe let's stop that from happening, given what happened the last time. But
it was Devontae Derricott, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Devontae Derricott and Terrell Clinkscales, two more JUCO 4 stars than under Bill Snyder that did not work out.
All right, Connor. So with the next pick, you got.
This is kind of the break here for me, where it does kind of break into that next tier. But I'm taking Sawyer Schilke here. This is someone that kind of like Polk. I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did when I got to his film. But I think what I like most about him is that he seems to diagnose things very quickly and does so from a variety of places. He plays just about equally in his highlights in the middle of the defense and off the edge. So I thought that was interesting to see that he played multiple different spots. So he filled multiple different roles. He was doing some edge rushing and he was playing some Mike backer. And I thought that he was pretty competent at both of those. He seemed to be decently fluid, and he also sifted through the trash pretty well in run defense. So I think that the building blocks of a pretty solid linebacker are there. I'm not expecting him to be like a first team all Big 12 guy, but he's someone that I am hoping that by the time he's like a redshirt sophomore or junior, that we can put back there at least as like a first guy off the bench and not like be like worried about everything.
Yeah, Sawyer Schilke, very smart, very physical, can hit really hard. Another guy that was a camp guy at K-State. And they've had a lot of success with those guys at linebacker before. I'm just going to keep it pretty simple. I mean, he's somebody that I think will be a lot of fun at the Mike spot, because I am higher than on Schilke than I was on Austin Romaine. So maybe one of those.
You're not alone there, but
one of these days that Austin Romaine take is gonna look horrible, because I did not see it with Austin Romaine. But that's
you're
why.
not alone, man.
That's why I do this instead of actually coach.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add on Schilke. So anyway, Drew, you're next up. Who are you taking?
My next pick at team defensive back, I'm going to take Dominic Mitchell. I think that he is a really, really smart football player. When I talked about like sleepers of the class for the class superlatives, Dominic Mitchell was the first guy that came to my mind because he just kind of went super under the radar. K-State saw him at a mega camp. He came in, took a visit, sealed the deal right off the bat. Like, had a bunch of like service academies and like IVs going after him. Super, super smart kid. Plays at a just absolute factory of a high school, so he'll be ready to go. Did not enroll early, but as somebody that, even though he did not, I wouldn't be surprised if he found his way to make an impact, potentially even early.
Yeah, to me, Dominic Mitchell, he wasn't my next defensive back on the board. And I think that speaks to, again, my draft philosophy of ceiling, which tells you who's up next. But he's going to be a special teams demon at very minimum, and I think that he's going to be a enforcing safety who, honorable mention Big 12 guy, and who will inevitably knock someone out at least once, or at least knock the wind out of someone. And he's able to do that because normally when you think of big hitters, you don't think that they're cerebral because they have too many concussions. But Dominic Mitchell has that sort of smarts that goes with the game to get himself in a position to make that big hit. So that's why I think that he could be an immediate contributor on special teams. And I think that's why he'd be such a good enforcing strong safety as well.
Yeah, Mitchell was another guy that I was kind of pleasantly surprised with when it came time to review everybody's film, because I remember like kind of like his commitment like kind of coming and going, but his film was actually pretty interesting, and I came out of it thinking he had a lot more potential than I initially was giving him credit for. So I was really happy to see that. And I agree with all your guys' assessments. Super hard hitter. The only thing that kept me from putting him a little higher was a few of his highlights. He was like just like a half step behind on like reading a cutback, and which like playing aggressive is awesome, but it did get him to a few situations where if it's a D1 athlete, then like he would have gotten burned. But it was not a D1 athlete. He's super fast, so it didn't really matter. But I know that despite how last year went, like the staff is so good with coaching safeties. And so I'm not too worried about them being able to coach up Dominic Mitchell, especially if he's as intelligent as reported. So,
yeah, the next pick, we'll probably separate out the transfer episode. So we'll do the high school and then just go into transfers because, again, 2-hour episode versus 2, maybe 1-hour episodes. But this player has by far the lowest floor out of any of the high school commits, but he has one of the highest ceilings, and that is Martell Jackson out of Derby. And I called Darian Whitaker an athlete earlier. Darian Whitaker was an athlete who played football. Martell Jackson is an athlete. But damn if it's not tempting when you see his tape, where normally as a corner, athleticism can only take you so far. You're going to get burnt. You're going to put up a bad rep. But whenever you're such a good athlete that you're making it look like it doesn't matter without any of those technical skill sets. Like Donovan McIntosh a few years ago was an elite athlete who knew how to use the sideline. That was his elite trait as a corner. Martell Jackson is athleticism. That's it. But you see it, and it's just, man, that's just a ball of clay that you could work with. So lowest floor, by far, not even close, but one of the highest ceilings as an outside corner at 6'2", a long 6'2", who's just freakishly athletic. And this is me, you could say that this is me over-adjusting for the Jacob Parrish takes of yesterday. You are correct. Anyway.
Yeah, you sniped my pick here, man. I was going to take Martell Jackson if you didn't. Another guy where I remember when he committed, I was kind of like, all right, sure. And I don't know what a Martell Jackson is, but okay. But no, his film's really great. And he also, I didn't realize until I was going through reviewing for this podcast, but he reports a 4.29 40. So the athleticism is there with him. Now, is that 4.29, legitimate? Is that laser or not? Who's to say? But regardless, if you're confident enough to even say you're on a 4.29, you're probably on at least a 4.4. So I'm willing to buy that. But no, he is super raw. There's like one highlight of him and his huddle tape, like bumping a guy into the sideline, and I like almost did a fist pump because it was really cool to see him like do something that was like actual like football activities, and that was pretty cool. But no, he's got a long way to go as a prospect. But like you said, Ace, he's a ball of clay.
Yeah, he has a long way to go. He's more raw than Zayshawn Rich, but Zayshawn Rich was extremely raw coming out of high school and ended up playing in every game, and for my money, should have been the Rate Bowl defensive MVP. But Jackson's super, super fast, super long. And like you guys have said, just because he's so raw, it can go one of two ways. But typically we've seen some of these guys come in that we think have kind of like a lower floor but a higher end ceiling, and they've ended up being really well or gone really well for K-State. So Jackson could be another one of those guys.
So Connor, with the next pick, you are taking?
Here I'm taking Dylan Villarreal. This was another late ad. I think he was a flip from James Madison, if I'm remembering correctly. But he's again, it's a little difficult to evaluate these interior guys. But he has some traits that I really like. And One of them is that he's got really strong hands. Almost every highlight in his huddle tape is him just throwing somebody to the ground, like vertically. Like he just engages with them and like just throws them onto the ground and then just like lays on top of them to break a few ribs for good measure. And I like that we can work with that. So like he's a mean offensive lineman. And like he's not necessarily the most mobile guy in the world, at least not right now. And his pass protection needs some work. But there are some pieces there where I could see him being a contributor in the future.
Yeah, Villarreal is the guy that was just very interesting because he flipped so late. I think that he has a pretty high ceiling as well along the interior of the offensive line. And was somebody that when I saw him, I was surprised that he was even committed to James Madison. I thought that he was going to be, that he could have gone higher than ended up going higher. So he's somebody that I'm excited about for his future at K-State too. Another early enrollee as well.
Yeah, if this guy was a boxer, he'd probably kill someone. And that was probably my biggest takeaway, was just how hard he hit people with his hands. And I think that he's a decent enough athlete, but it's what really gets why he's not as high as someone like a Brock Heath is his pass protection needs a lot of work. And he plays way, way, way too high in those situations. And you hear pass protection for an interior offensive lineman. It's like, oh, it's not a big deal. No, it is a big deal, because when a tackle gets beat, the quarterback can step up. When a guard gets beat, you're walking into meat. Like that's it. You're walking straight into another human being. So Villarreal, I don't know how it's pronounced. I think I'm pronouncing it the Spanish way. I don't think he is Hispanic in any way, but that's a solid addition, which now I think the board is wide open and I have no idea who's going next. So Drew, who do you got?
I'm going to take Ashton Moore. I think that he has one of the highest floors out of anybody in this recruiting class. He is a more athletic Austin Moore. And I think that in this day and age, like if you are able to play special teams and can do all the little things well, which he's going to, like there's a role for you on a 105-man roster if that ever gets finalized or if they figure something out in that standpoint.
Yeah, I full disclosure, I had him last just based off of talent, because you are right, he does have a very high floor. I don't know if he gets much past his floor. And again, just based on how I like projecting, which funnily enough, the next pick is going to contradict that philosophy. But Ashton Moore is someone who's never going to transfer out, and that has value. That's my spiel.
The one thing that we got out of his highlight tape that I thought really stood out to me is basically every single highlight is him just popping someone. Like he didn't have many just regular wrap-up tackles. He just obliterated people, which isn't something that Austin really did all that much. And yeah, he definitely has better tape than Austin. I didn't have him this high for what it's worth, but I also didn't have him last. So I found myself in between both of you. But yeah, like he, I think as of like at his age, he's a much better prospect than Austin was, and Austin turned into a functional Big 12 linebacker. So if Ashton can follow a similar trajectory, then like I'm hoping that like he can find a path to playing time, or if nothing else, be a special teams guy. And like I said, not transferring out or being a risk, like just that's going to have some value.
Which that leads us into the next pick, which I keep saying I draft based on ceiling. This is a player I'm drafting for exactly who he is right now, and that's McGuire Richmond. McGuire Richmond, if he got 30 pounds on him, he would have been a 5-star in the 1990s, because what does he do? He tackles. That is McGuire Richmond's skill set. He's a solid enough run defender who has decent enough athleticism where you're not going to vomit every time that he's in coverage, but he tackles. And that's going to be his primary skill set. So this is one of the rare times that I'm taking a player as they are. I'm not projecting them to get significantly better. Obviously, every player improves, but I think McGuire Richmond is one of the safer picks that I personally would make.
McGuire Richmond's an interesting one for me because I remember when he committed, I absolutely loved him. Was just in love with this film and thought that he was like the guy. And then for whatever reason, when we came back and watched tape again, I didn't quite see it the same way. So I'm not sure what I was seeing that first time around that made me that excited compared to now. But I still think he's a solid addition. And also he's got good genes because his brother Mason, he was an offensive lineman at Iowa, and I think he just got drafted, or at the very least made a UDFA. But so he has some good genes going through him. But otherwise, this is solid as another Kansas kid.
Yeah, McGuire Richmond is about as solid as they come too. And yeah, he is a tackling machine. Like, if Ashton Moore, I had to make sure that I was talking about the right one, is the machine 2.0, McGuire Richmond, can they be 3.0 if they're in the same class?
2.1.
Yeah, he's 2.1.
Marginal updates, Anyway, Connor, who you got next?
I'm taking Dalton Knapp here, which he was someone that was wildly successful in the Texas private school league. I think they won a state championship. And he's also from the same town as fellow K-State commit Brad Stanier, but they went to different high schools, I think. But Knapp, very long arms, kind of reminiscent of Nate Matlick in that sense. They have kind of similar builds. They're kind of cut from the same cloth in how they play defensive end. More technicians than overpowering. Knapp is someone that's going to need to put on a lot of mass to be effective at the power 4 level. But he's got interesting burst. And I think that there's some athletic tools that are there. I think he's just going to take some time, especially with the logjam that exists at defensive end, because there's just so much talent in that room right now that I'd be completely shocked to see him step on the field this year. No offense to him.
Yeah, he's super quick for defensive end, can really get to the quarterback well, as we all kind of saw his senior season. And like you said, he's going to need to gain weight, but I don't think that he is going to have a problem with that because he has a really good frame.
I don't have anything else to add there. It's the quickness that reminds me of Matlick. But anyway, we'll sort of rapid fire these last few picks. So we could the world may never know. Did we record the transfer episode right after, or did we wait a day? I don't even know yet. But Drew, who are you taking next?
I'm going to take Brad Stanier next. He's kind of like the opposite of Dalton Knapp because he is already huge. Probably not as good of an athlete as Knapp is, but is just really, really solid. And again, with kind of this logjam that K-State has at defensive end right now, he can take a year to really kind of figure out the college level and go from there. And then another camp guy. So again, I've seen him in person. So that gives you an advantage for me at certain points.
Yeah, he's just going to be the bigger bot. He's sort of the thunder and lightning combination where you have Knapp, you have that sort of quicker body, and you have Stanier and just the bigger body power rusher. So I think in a lot of ways, those two complement each other.
Yeah, the main thing with Stanier that stood out to me was that he has a really good rip move. Like technically he's kind of underdeveloped right now, except for the rip move, which worked just about every time he used it in his highlight tape. So I mean, when you're in high school, it's good to have at least like one move that you can pretty reliably go to. But I imagine that's going to be one of the first things that we need to do is find some other stuff that also works for him, like maybe an ice pick or something. But I agree with your guys' assessment. Even though he's from the same city, as the same height as Dalton Knapp, they are very different players, even though they play the same position.
Yeah. And I believe this is the second to last pick for the high schoolers. And you want to talk about the anti-Larry Porter the fourth? It's Adonis Moyes, where Adonis Moyes peaked super early and then just sort of stagnated. Whereas LP4 was sort of, he didn't get many offers, and then he suddenly decided that he was going to be the best receiver in the Kansas City Metro. Adonis Moyes ends up transferring to IMG Academy and ends up just kind of being a guy there. So this is in a class that has a lot of projections when you're talking about guys like Martell Jackson or Darian Whitaker. This is sort of a weird lottery ticket where you're going based off of what happened 3 years ago as opposed to what happened 1 year ago. And I think it's a fine lottery ticket in terms of process. The lack of pop, I want to say, from his last few years, like the lack of standout moments, granted at IMG where, I mean, you throw a stone and you have a 5-star wide receiver. It doesn't worry me. I just kind of view this as a lottery ticket, take it or leave it.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't have standout film, but he at one point I think actually still is a 4-star on ESPN, which I guess goes to show how often they update their rankings. But he, on top of having another name that could contend for all name team, you're also taking another guy from a really huge high school football factory for multiple years in a row. Where last year it was Devon Rice out of Bishop Gorman. This year you get Moyes out of IMG, and I guess maybe as a staff we're trying to look at that as getting two things out of one player, where we're hopefully getting a guy that's kind of used to a more football oriented lifestyle. And also we're maybe hoping to kind of get our foot in the door there. I'm not sure if IMG is where we're going to be swimming very often, but it doesn't hurt to at least get a guy from there and just see what happens.
Yeah, for me, Moyes, I think, is probably the biggest wild card out of this entire recruiting class. Like, you genuinely, I don't know where his college career is going to go, because there's very little high school film of him from his junior and senior seasons at IMG.
Yeah, and that's why it is. I use the term lottery ticket, you use the term wild card. It means the same thing. He could be anything. He's the mystery box. But Connor, I guess you get Mr. I don't want to call him Mr. Irrelevant. That seems pretty mean, but I guess you get Mr. Irrelevant in this draft.
Yeah, so that leaves one player, or one scholarship player, we should say, unless we want to include Cub Patton in the role of specialist, which I did include him on my list as an honorable mention. But
honorable mention commit is crazy.
But Will Kemna, he's the last scholarship guy. He's someone that kind of committed early and had some decent ratings on On3 and 24/7. But the film is definitely, I don't think, reflective of that. I think that he has a good frame to work with, but I think he's a major project as an offensive tackle. I think he's got a long way to go, but I'm interested to see if LePac can do something there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Will Kemna probably has the furthest to go of all the offensive linemen, not just in this class, but even the 2024 class. So it means that, again, he probably has a pretty high ceiling because he is a really athletic guy at tackle, but also means that he has a pretty low floor.
Yeah, him and Ashton Moore there were times that I looked at Ashton Moore's film and I'm like, yeah, that's serviceable. But Will Kenma, him and Ashton were both kind of competing for that last spot because it was about every other rep with Ashton Moore. I was like, yeah, I can see that working. And with Kenma, it was like, okay, he has some decent reps and some where you're like, oh my God, is this even a power 4 player? And granted, there is a 4-star in the state of Kansas that had the same problem. He's now going to play at Mizzou. But there's like 2 players every year that I'm like, if I hope you get to keep your scholarship, and I hope for you as a person you get your free education. I'm scared for my life if you end up on the football field. But overall, we'll give our final thoughts here before we pause/end this episode to determine what we're going to do with the transfers. But overall, we'll go same order. What are your overall thoughts on this recruiting class?
I would say my overall thoughts on this class, I really, really like this class. It's a notch below 2023, but you're really seeing K-State starting to flex their muscle because these are the best 3 recruiting years that K-State has had since the Ron Prince era. So you're really seeing a different type of athlete and player come through Manhattan, which is obviously really exciting because that means that there's just a whole bunch of talent on campus, which hopefully means winning more games.
Yeah. And we're in the business of winning in Manhattan, Kansas, and also not having a psychopath at head coach anymore. But for me, I agree with you. This is below the 23 class, but there are also 4 guys that in every other class except for the 23 class, they would have been number 1. Lincoln Cure would be number 1 in every other year. He'd be fighting Avery Johnson for the number 1 spot. He wouldn't win that fight, but he'd be fighting for it. Larry Porter would be number 1 in every other class. JoJo Scott would be fighting Toby Osunsanmi for the number 1 spot in Toby's class. Darian Whitaker would be in that same boat. Like, this is top to bottom. I think pound for pound has the potential to be the best class of the Kleiman era, pound for pound. But yeah, it's a really, really exciting group that has just about any skill set and any archetype that you could ask for.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. It's going to be really tough to eclipse that 23 class because I do think that class in 23 just really had something special brewing with getting Avery committed really early and him kind of rallying the troops there. And we brought in that was kind of also the first year that the dam really broke when it came to recruiting at K-State, where the past couple of years we had started kind of picking off guys that actually had other power conference interests, like Andrew Langang was one of the first guys there. But that 23 year, we really won some pretty heavy battles, like Trey Spivey and Asa Newsom. Those were like genuine, incredible recruiting wins for this staff. So it's hard to put this class above it. But of course, Lincoln Cure is probably like in a vacuum the biggest recruiting win like ever for K-State. Like regardless of positional value, especially considering just how hard Oregon was going after him there at the end. But no, this is another really good class, top 40 class again for K-State, which it's kind of crazy to think about it because I think back to when I was in high school and I was wasting time in homeroom checking ESPN, looking at K-State commit lists and looking at all the 4-stars that we were never going to touch. So look at where we're at now.
Yeah. So we'll give Drew an opportunity. All the substantive stuff is gone, but Drew, feel free to plug everything you've got going on, including the great work that you, Derek, KSU fan, and Mason all do at KSO.
Yeah, I'd just say subscribe to KSO. If you do and you're a new member, you get your first week for $1. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You get to see me talk about stuff like this on a weekly basis. On Thursdays, right now we're ranking every player at K-State to throw a pass in the last 20 years every Friday. And then Monday through Wednesday is kind of just a normal like news kind of show. So yeah, I'd just say just subscribe. And I had a lot of fun doing this, and I always love talking recruiting. So anytime that I can find a little bit of time to do it, I'll always make time.
A little bit of time, an hour and 15 minutes later. But if that's all, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alley Cats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville ACats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleyCats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I'm at ACEdwards00.
I'm at Connor Baltzor, capital C, capital B.
Drew, you forgot to plug your Twitter. My bad.
Oh, mine is at Galloway __ Drew.
So thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alley Cats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alley Cats.